Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Friday, February 2nd, 2024. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by the two best friends anyone could ask for, Cody Roadcap, Tyler Snyder in the house. It's nice being able to start making some three puns again here. How you guys doing?
Didn't we just do this?
Yeah, but I had to say it different because Tyler wasn't here for about seven and
I'm
a half.
sorry. That was a poor Groundhog's Day joke. That's really what it was. So happy
That
Groundhog's
was
Day,
horrible.
everybody listening.
Yeah, I didn't even catch that it's Groundhog Day.
And Tyler's gonna act like he's not even here. So it's
Look,
like show's usual.
I'm sorry. The dog started squeaking the toy. I kind of didn't hear anything. So all I heard was a bad pun followed by a bad Groundhog Day joke, and I zoned out.
Oh, hopefully
Probably
the
like our
listeners
fans
did.
did.
I mean, insert cricket sound in post. Not that Cody actually edits anything anymore, but
Why are you throwing me under the bus like that? We did
because I
not
feel
have.
like I have
We
to.
did not
It's
have
fine.
to go there. Okay,
Great start in the first minute and 17 seconds.
we're throwing out.
Reminder,
shit.
everybody out there, we have new episodes every Friday, and you can follow us on our social media channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at the Couch GMs. Get even more than you get from the show. And as always, feel free to drop us a DM to help us back. We can help back you up when your fights with your
Oh,
friends. We can
my
talk
God.
some Pro Bowl, whatever you guys want to do. I'm trying to think of how we would fill it in because normally we talk fantasy with the people, but you don't even have daily fantasy this week because it's the dumbest game of the year. But we have plenty to talk about still. So why don't we sit back, relax, and chat? We'll see if I learn how to do the chatting part because apparently I couldn't do that in the intro. But we'll start it off with the conference championship games, reacting to the two games that happened last Sunday. Starting it off with the Kansas City Taylor Swifts versus the Baltimore Ravens, where the Chiefs did pull out a victory. Immediate takeaways. What do you guys got?
Baltimore played scared, and then tried to act tough on the field. So basically, that's what happened.
Yeah, I think the whole NFL community is collectively disappointed in the outcome of both games. A lot of people not happy about the Super Bowl matchup, but yeah, the Ravens beat themselves, I think is the easiest way to say it.
Hmm.
Watching that game, they made so many boneheaded mistakes, and Zay Flowers is going to be kicking himself for the few that he made. And it's unfortunate because Zay Flowers still in that game, even with his two big mistakes, still did so much to be considered a phenomenal player. He had a phenomenal game, but it's that young kid, that young rookie learning experience. This is going to show him for the future. Hopefully he'll learn from these experiences and not commit them again. But the fumble was huge, and the personal foul was huge too. You make a big play, don't shove the defender down. I mean, just get up, act like you've been there, get back in the huddle. Everything you need to say was just done on the field.
100% agree with that. I still think we need to let them taunt, but the NFL's not going to do that. So until they do, you definitely have to not shove the guy back down, back off. Do your own celebration, but don't do it over a guy because the NFL is proving it again and again. They're going to flag it. The Ravens had plenty of opportunities to win the game still. The fumble at the 1 yard line was a huge blow, but then there was also a Lamar Jackson interception and triple coverage later in the game. Like, the Ravens had every chance to win and just couldn't get over the edge. So here we are with that Chiefs defense coming up big in two different moments, and we'll see if they can do it again in the Super Bowl.
I mean, the Chiefs only allowed over 24 points one time this season, so I do want to give credit to their defense. As much as maybe the Ravens went away from the run game a little bit too much and went too much pass heavy in a game they were only down by 7 for majority of it. Like, I feel like they could have still ran their offense. I know a lot of people are tired of the Chiefs, but what they're doing is pretty remarkable, and how they've changed from an offensive powerhouse to almost a defensive powerhouse is kind of something cool to see as well. At least I think.
In the span of a year, even. Like, that's the craziest thing. They didn't score a point after like the midpoint of the second quarter in that game. And you think that happens most of the time, they lose, but that defense has been so good and opportunistic that it didn't seem to matter.
The other team that, had the game right there and just completely collapsed was the second game which I'm not going to lie. I don't know about you guys. I got bored in the second quarter, so I took a nap. And I woke up right before halftime to see some things. And then I was like, oh, I guess I'll watch the rest of the game. And I just watched the Lions slowly give the game away to the 49ers. I mean, people have talked about it all the last couple of days about the fourth down call. So why don't we just start there? Do you agree with them? Do you like them? Would you have made them?
Well, I will say that I did not take a nap. I fully went to bed at halftime. Went to bed at halftime with seeing the Lions kicking butt. They were doing great. They looked phenomenal. I was so excited, and then I woke up to see the score, and I was like, "What train wreck happened to cause this?" And so it was very disappointing. So I didn't see the fourth downs, but I definitely saw them later on the replays. I saw plenty of discussions. People are heated about them. But I mean, look, the Lions got to where they were because they made bold decisions. They took some chances. So you kind of see two extremes here. You have the Lions who played with too much confidence or took too many chances, and then you have the Ravens in the other game that played scared and didn't take enough chances. And it's two completely different majors, two different extremes, and yet they both lost. So you needed to find a happy medium. I don't. We're only talking about the calls because they didn't work. That's the biggest thing.
That's true. And when you're someone like Dan Campbell who always does play pedal to the metal, then like you're seeing he's staying on brand. I think the biggest thing is going to be, is he going to coach a little differently next year? And is that a good or a bad thing? Like, honestly, he probably does play too aggressive. I would have at least taken one of those field goals, if not two. I believe there was 3 fourth down calls that were in question. But that's not how he's played all year. So if he does end up going for the field goals, they lose the game, then he ends up being an enemy in another way, being like he played too conservatively. He didn't play his own game. So I commend him for being the coach that he is, like not changing it up, staying aggressive. So I don't want to give him a fault on that, but I'm interested to see if going into next year, he becomes a little smarter about how he goes for it or kicks in those situations, as opposed to being pedal to the metal whole entire time.
No, I think I don't think he's going to change. I think Dan Campbell's Dan Campbell for what he is. And while I do think, the fourth down calls, like you meant, like, yeah, the fourth down where he didn't kick the field goal when it was a 3-point game to tie the game back up, that one was a little bit questionable, but it was like a 48-yarder, and the kicker, you know, hasn't kicked outside. And it's the money badger, and it was over 40 yards. Like, Jake Moody missed a kick, so I understand going for it. And he's done all the game. For me, though, the big question mark, and I know Tyler, you didn't see it. George, maybe you'll want to jump in. Was the last drive, clock management, time management, down 10 essentially, and not taking the field goal early, having to burn a timeout on trying to run the ball on 3rd and goal. Like, there was a lot more question marks on that last drive that I think that the inexperience and the lack of being there, are being in the playoffs, finally caught up to the Detroit Lions.
But again, going for the touchdown first, I think it still fits into the motto of go pedal to the metal. There's ways you can argue that it's easier to get the field goal than it is the touchdown. And then there's other ways to argue that it's easier to get the touchdown than the field goal. You can say like, oh, you only have to get to the 50-yard line to throw a Hail Mary, but how often does that convert? As opposed to being like, you have to get an extra 15 yards to attempt a field goal, but you have to have the timeout to stop the clock or have the time to spike the ball. Like, I don't know if there's really a true formula that'll tell you, is it better to take the field goal first or the touchdown first, especially with the onside kick being broken. The bigger thing I think has to come down to, could they have gotten another possession without an onside kick if they had kicked the field goal early? There was a chance, and I think that's where they kind of messed it up. But again, playing pedal to the metal the way that Dan Campbell does, I think that the way they handled it is the way that he, is his personality. He stayed on brand the entire time.
Look, if he didn't stay Dan Campbell, he could have had that game in Detroit when he decided not to kick the extra point and play for overtime against Dallas.
Against Dallas. Yeah.
So he's going to stick to his brand. But yeah, that third down call when you had all 3 timeouts that you could have basically saying if we don't make the end zone with this run, which honestly they have one of the best offensive lines. So if it works, no one talks about it, like Tyler mentioned. But it didn't, and basically came down to them having to recover an onside kick, which they touched the ball too early. They weren't even close. So like trying to give your team the most opportunities to win. I don't mind going for the touchdown first, but save those timeouts.
Yeah, how many times have we seen a team like the Chiefs go for it on 4th and 7 on their own side of the field, and everybody questions it, but they have some crazy play drawn up. It works beautifully. They keep moving the ball. We're all like, oh man, Chiefs are so good. Andy Reid's a genius. But Dan Campbell makes decisions like that, and we're all like, what is he doing? What an idiot. He needs to learn. He needs to get better. Like, if it works, no one talks about it, or they talk about it in a much different light. So the only reason we're talking negatively is because it didn't work. Also, I want to put a shout out there that we're going to lose fans if George says pedal to the metal one more time. I think he said it like 11 times in that little rambling.
He probably did. George likes to say, the same word over and over. He doesn't have a very in-depth vocabulary.
Amen to that.
But the Lions, yeah, I was just talking out the backside for a little bit right there. But the Lions did get some good news this week as Ben Johnson declined to take a head coaching job. They're keeping their offensive coordinator for another year. The Texans, they retained their offensive coordinator, but we did finally get the last 2 head coaching positions filled. You guys want to talk about that?
I believe we had to talk about 3. I don't know if Raheem Morris was hired by the Falcons before our last show, so I'll mention that one just in case. The Seahawks did settle on Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald after they got eliminated from the playoffs. And then the final spot was for the Washington Commanders, who decided to go with former head coach and Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. I'll start with Dan Quinn if we just start our conversation here, because I was thinking it was a bad move, like, failed head coach and Washington kind of going back to its old ways, but not necessarily really, because I think Dan Quinn did have a pretty solid run in Atlanta. They obviously lost the 28-3 game with him there. But he's somebody who kind of just had to hit the reset button. That's why he was out of head coaching for a few years, did end up as a defensive coordinator. But I think he is somebody who could start to right the ship for the Commanders. It's interesting to me that a couple of teams went defensive heavy with these coaching hires, considering there's been a lot of offensive coaches that have had success lately.
Yeah, and you also got to think we are, as a football community, we're very short-sighted. We're very we have a short-term memory. So if you look at Dan Quinn completely imploding against a team that nobody thought would really do anything in the playoffs, the Cowboys defense looked horrible in the playoffs, and everyone's like, well, nobody wants Dan Quinn as a head coach. Look what he just did. Yeah, look what he just did all season. Cowboys defense is one of the best in the league. You have multiple defensive player of the year candidates and Deron Bland and Micah Parsons. Like, the Cowboys defense is phenomenal, and Dan Quinn has done extraordinary things with it. So you can't just look at the last game. You can't just look at the most recent thing. You have to look at the grand scheme, because any head coach, look at Bill Belichick, look at Andy Reid, any head coach is still going to have bad games. It happens. It's the NFL. Nobody goes 18-0 every single year. It just doesn't happen. So you can't just look at the last game. I think Dan Quinn's going to be fine. I don't think he's going to be coach of the year anytime soon, but I think he's going to be a solid head coach. They have that veteran presence to step in and start leading the Commanders, hopefully, in the right direction.
Yeah, like most hires, like your staff's going to be super important too. So like that coordinator he puts around, whether it's Sam Howell or a high draft pick at quarterback, is going to be even more crucial since he is defensive focused. And I think the Mike McDonald that went to Seattle, I think that's a really good hire for them as well. Interesting enough, they go from the oldest head coach to now the youngest head coach. They're just going, hey, we got to get younger. And they went all the way to 36 as the youngest head coach, which makes me feel old, but I'm not 36 yet.
No. That means we still have a chance.
You're right. I like the way you're thinking.
Nice.
I can't wait for my Wikipedia page to say podcast host defensive backs coach, head coach. There we go. That's my trajectory.
He's also just skipping so many steps. He's going right to DB's coach and then straight to head coach. He's not even taking the D coordinator position. Forget that.
No, I'm going to be a savant like Sean McVay.
Why are you a DB's coach? Nothing about you says defensive backs. Nothing. Like, I'm
Dude, that
sorry.
was the first thing that popped into my head. I was like, yeah, I shouldn't be that. Because of my stare when I played safety in flag football. That's why. I'm going to teach them all the stare.
Yeah. I was very intimidated by that. That's honestly true.
I mean, I only had to cover George, so.
So how good are you?
Savant like Sean McVay.
All right. We're getting off the rails. As always.
We're getting on the rails, buddy. This is the good conversation right here. What coach are you? What do you want to be?
I mean, I've only ever played defensive back or as in pickup football quarterback. So not a quarterback's coach. I'll be the DB's coach.
All right, fine. You can be the DB's coach. I'll be the kicking
I'll just coach special teams.
You are
hang
special.
On.
Yeah.
Let me get my analytics mode.
Man, he's pulling the glasses. I haven't seen those glasses in a while.
All right, I am now the analytics coordinator.
Cody looks like he's 36 now. He's ready.
All right, Tyler's going to punch me through the camera. So I don't know what's next, George. Help us.
I don't know if you have a bumper or not. If not, we're going to have to fake it. Why don't we talk about some NFL awards? Cody scoured.
Called me out for my editing at the beginning, and I was prepared.
See, it was spelled right too, so I'm proud of you. We're having a good time.
You're never gonna let him live that down.
Oh, 100% not. Yeah, I thought you spelled something wrong.
Like he hasn't been my friend for
No.
over a decade and knows I'm literally the worst speller on the planet. So,
well, I'm speaking just about as well as you speak today. So this is I'm picking too much up off of you. I might take a week off.
Guys, just meet in the middle. You both suck.
At least we show up.
Cody scoured the corners of the internet to try to find some betting odds for some of the top NFL awards. So we're going to kind of go backwards from how you would typically see awards listed. I'm going to talk about the awards, who are the finalists that were announced last week, and some betting odds, and we can try to see if there's any bets that you think would be good to take or who you think the favorites are to win these awards. I'll start it off with comeback player of the year. In no particular order, we have Joe Flacco at plus 200, Damar Hamlin minus 300, Baker Mayfield plus 1,500, Matt Stafford plus 8,000, and Tua at plus 400. Who do you think is going to win this? I feel like it's gotten a little bit shadier as the year goes on.
Yeah.
Going to win or should win? I think those are two different answers.
Give us both.
We're going to ask that
Going to win. Going to win, Damar Hamlin. Should win, Baker Mayfield.
He's going down to the fourth worst odds on the list here. Yeah.
You can make the argument against Damar Hamlin because he barely played. You can make the argument against Joe Flacco because he didn't come in until the very end of the season. So you can make arguments against both of those guys. But, I mean, Baker was completely written off by teams and the NFL. He got lucky finding a situation in Tampa Bay where they wanted a 1-year fill-in quarterback just to like bridge the gap, and he ended up performing so well that they want to extend him. So I think Baker deserves it. I think he really revived his career.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And before I say my piece, just the odds are from Vegas Insider. They kind of like scour the web for all of them. So they might not be accurate on your website. You might not even be able to put the bets in anymore because they've announced the finalist. So take each odds with a grain of salt, but it helps us to see a little bit who's going to win, which is why Damar is currently the favorite. But I think that odds gap, because I mean, at the beginning of the season, when the first game he was active, that stuff shot up to like, you're going to like have to pay $1,000 to win $1 kind of thing. And now it's back a lot closer. And I like the Baker Mayfield that you mentioned. I mean, he got his first year offensive coordinator a head coaching job. Like, what does that mean for Baker moving forward? Who knows? But he definitely, and he got them to a divisional round playoffs. I know the awards are made before the end of the regular season. But I like the Baker, and I think Flacco. I think it really is a 3-man race, though, between those three.
I wanted to go in here and kind of like vie for Tua because he probably shouldn't have played football again after suffering concussion and then another concussion and I think a third concussion. There might have been 2 or 3, but it was a bad. Didn't play the whole last part of last season. Comes out and leads one of the better regular seasons. I mean, it is probably a little bit worse because they did have the tumble at the end of the year, lost the division in the last week, but I think you convinced me more on Baker because he performed pretty poorly last year. He did have a decent run at the end of the year with the Rams, but at least Tua, when he did play back in 2022, he was solid. He just got knocked out for injury. So you're kind of selling me on Baker.
I don't think that your argument should start out, he shouldn't play football again, just with the people that are on the list. Just going to throw that out there. And with the whole, I don't even know where it's going to go after that. So, because your first comment just got me so off guard.
Cody's head went sideways, and he just scoured for the entire time George was talking.
It was almost like the stare he gives when you're covering you in flag football. So, just to give you guys a little insight, go hit the rewind button and check it out.
Hopefully they're back now. We gave them a little break too.
Right, cool.
Next award.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. The candidates, the finalists are, we have Will Anderson at plus 225, Jalen Carter minus 225, Joey Porter Jr. plus 8,000, Kobe Turner plus 600, and Devin Witherspoon plus 5,000. Am I the only one that's shocked that after a weaker second half, Jalen Carter's considered the favorite?
No. I think this is the hardest award to predict, though, which I think the odds might be the closest of all the potential candidates out there.
I think it's a 2-man race, personally.
Between
Carter and Will Anderson?
Yeah.
I agree
I would have
that.
flipped those two in my mind, but I guess I can understand because there was some solid performances, but I don't know if there was anybody that really did stand out exactly. That's why it's the hardest to predict.
Yeah, and I think Will Anderson got like a lot of buzz late.
Yeah, it's basically the first half of the season was all Jalen Carter, and the second half of the season was all Will Anderson. So, as a collective whole, it's 50-50. It's you got to think do the writers have the recency bias? Do they have well, then in that case, I think it's going to be Will Anderson.
Yeah, and I mean, he did only have, 6 sacks in the regular season, and 2 of those came in the second to last week. So what he got flashy late, but like we said, the votes are cast and submitted after week 18.
And we'll get to this when we get to Defensive Player of the Year, but I also think that we have, just like the MVP award is the quarterback award, I feel like the Defensive Player of the Award has just become a sacks leader award. I feel like sacks are overvalued. There's so much more to the game than just getting a sack. You can be a game wrecker, game changer on defense without getting a sack. And I think Will Anderson did so much more for that defense. Even if he didn't get any stats on the play, he still drew 2-3 offensive linemen over to him to block to make sure that he wouldn't get the sack, which opened up things for everybody on the other side. That's a game changer for defense. So he did a lot, honestly.
The Aaron Donald argument from back when he wasn't getting sacks, exactly that.
Yeah.
Because sacks aren't a true measure of how good you are at rushing the passer, in my opinion.
Pressures are a better measure.
1,000%.
Yes, but we're not going to hear that in the mainstream stats categories for a while, I'm sure.
Or SWAT. That's a real good one, too.
Zoom in on Tyler's face. Triggered.
Slow down that eye roll.
All right. Offensive Rookie of the Year now. We have our finalists are Jahmyr Gibbs at plus 20,000. His teammate Sam Laporta at plus 15,000. Puka Nacua plus 450. Bijan Robinson is at plus 15,000 as well. And then the leader in the clubhouse is CJ Stroud minus 1,000. Always quarterbacks leaning towards this one. I think you could argue that Puka Nacua, who is second on that list, should have a little bit more credit considering he broke rookie records and everything. But I think the writers always lean towards the quarterback.
Let's not try to.
I'm not trying to downplay how Stroud did.
Yeah, it's not like an average quarterback versus a breakout super wide receiver. Like Stroud had an incredible rookie season for a quarterback.
I'm just trying to be out here fighting for skill position players' rights and awards as opposed to just quarterbacks. I think it's my MVP trying to vie for a non-quarterback MVP that kind of leaks over into this.
No shade, but if it was between Puka and Bijan right now, and Bijan was the favorite, that would be questionable. They'd be that's just because he was drafted in the top 10, kind of thing. That's not what the odds are. That's not going to happen. They're going to get this right. But it's okay to give Puka some love. He had a really good season. Do you guys buy the Puka Nacua thing? Do anyone else think this feels more like a 1 year, wonder surprise, and is everyone just fully come around to him? Are we drafting him? Are we drafting him in the first round of the fantasy playoffs next year?
No.
First round's aggressive.
Well, I mean, for the stats that he put up, it warrants a first round. I mean, he's putting up the stats of a first round receiver. But me personally, no, I'm not drafting him higher than 5th, 4th, max.
I was going to say 3rd.
I'm going to look up while you all talk where he's currently ranked.
I was thinking it was a flash in the pan until Cooper Kupp came back, and then Cooper Kupp kind of played the leader in the clubhouse for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden it was still Puka Nacua's offense. Don't know if that was Cooper Kupp with injuries catching up to him or not, which is why it's going to be sketchy to take him so high in drafts next year. But I'm all in on Puka Nacua can be a top end wide receiver.
So he's currently, according to Fantasy Pros, would be the 15th overall player. So top of the second round of 12-man teams.
12-man. Little rich for my blood, but we'll also see if that adjusts in the long time until we draft.
George, I have no idea what's next. We're not looking at a rundown. That's all you, bud.
I didn't know if Tyler wanted to talk any more about it because he didn't say too much. Coach of the year candidates, finalists are Dan Campbell plus 1,600, John Harbaugh plus 2,200, D'Amico Ryans plus 1,000, Kyle Shanahan plus 6,000, and Kevin Stefanski minus 950. So obviously Kevin Stefanski way up there, played without a quarterback, and still had 11 wins this year. Hard to argue with that.
No, it's not. I do. 2 years ago when we did this episode, Tyler went on his little podcast podium, talk about why his head coach deserved to win when he made valid points. And I just want people to put some respect on Matt LaFleur's name. Youngest team in the league, got to the playoffs, first year starting quarterback, can't even make the finalist. Crazy. Especially when you got Kyle Shanahan, who is yeah, dude, you have all the superstars in the world.
What was D'Amico's odds?
Plus 1,000. So he was actually second best odds on the list.
So I think what the writers are telling us here is that the Texans going from the laughingstock of the NFL to a legitimate powerhouse and honestly a Super Bowl threat was all CJ Stroud. That's what that's telling me.
Yeah, that's a great point, because if you remember last year when they made that trade where they gave up their first round pick this year to the Cardinals, people are like, oh, the Cardinals are going to have pick 1 and pick 2, Caleb and Martin Harrison Jr. And guess what? Their pick is in the 20s.
Yeah, what the Texans did is nothing short of amazing. We talk about what the Packers did, and yeah, absolutely, Matt LaFleur deserves some respect. But just as much but at the same time, we didn't really give much love to Jordan Love either this year. And I'm not talking for awards. Obviously, he's not a rookie, but in general, we really didn't talk about Jordan Love until we hit the playoffs. So it's it's not just the head coach, it's not just the quarterback, it's a team effort. But what these writers are telling me, in my opinion, is that it's all CJ Stroud. That CJ Stroud is the reason that they got there, which I find interesting because they were still competitive when CJ Stroud got hurt. I think the offense made a huge flip. The defense made a huge flip. These receivers that were nothing, no names, became like fantasy must-haves. Maybe it was CJ Stroud, but maybe it's because they're well coached. I mean, D'Amico Ryans, I think, deserves a lot more respect. And I know he is in the category here. He is one of the finalists. And I don't know. I feel like it should be much closer than what it currently is.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I don't want to take away from what Kevin Stefanski was able to do with that Browns team. Like, but I wouldn't be surprised if the odds are wrong on this one, and it would go to someone like D'Amico Ryans.
If you can find D'Amico Ryans and plus odds, I would think that of all the odds we've talked about so far, that is probably my favorite of the bets. Because I'm with you too, Tyler, that I agree that what the Texans did can't be all CJ Stroud. And if the writers believe that, they're just insane. You can't put all that on a rookie quarterback. D'Amico Ryans has changed an entire culture there, and I'm interested to see how they continue. And I will take Tank Dell over Puka Nacua next year if Puka Nacua is going to be that expensive.
Yeah, and you can say it's all CJ Stroud. He's amazing. He stepped in. He was great. But who got CJ Stroud to NFL ready? I mean, CJ Stroud wasn't even the top-ranked quarterback coming into this year. What did Bryce Young do? What did Anthony Richardson do before injury? What did Will Levis do? Go back. What has Zach Wilson done? What has Mac Jones done? What have these other first-round quarterbacks done recently? It's taken some time. It's taken some building. It's taken some developing to finally get them to a level where we're like, okay, this guy's now good. CJ Stroud is an amazing, phenomenal athlete, but he doesn't just step onto the team and just be NFL ready and amazing. It takes coaching to be able to get him there and to get him there quickly. And again, it just deserves more of a shout out from D'Amico Ryans.
I don't know, we're not going to talk about all the candidates, but maybe Bobby Slowick will win Assistant Coach of the Year for his work with CJ Stroud to give the Texans a little bit of love.
Probably.
And they have all their coordinators coming back next year, so interesting to see if they're going to finish what they started. A lot of really don't expect them to.
The coordinator talk, just because it's a Titans news, they are going to get your new head coach's dad from the Browns to be their offensive line coach.
Oh, that's confirmed? I didn't hear that.
It was just announced. I just got a Twitter notification. So,
oh, sweet. I'm excited. I was hoping so, because the Titans really have had bad offensive line for the last 3 years in a row. So to get somebody good in that position is really good. I like it.
Underrated
cool to have father-son coaching
position. Underrated coaching position too, honestly. Maybe that's just coming from me as an Eagles fan who they put emphasis on the offense defensive line, but I think that there's a lot to it. Okay. 3 more awards to go. Defensive Player of the Year. First off, we have Jerron Bland at plus 20,000, Max Crosby plus 5,000, Myles Garrett, the leader in the clubhouse, minus 200. Micah Parsons is second, plus 300, and TJ Watt third, plus 400. So they're calling this a 3-man race between Garrett, Parsons, and TJ Watt. There's a lot of arguments also for Myles Garrett this year when he was in a sack lull that, you have to look at pressures. We talked about this a little earlier, so I had to bring this up. Do you guys think that he is the leader, or do you like one of the other two?
I think it should be TJ Watt, but
this one I like Jerron Bland.
So I like Bland. Like, he's flashy, but and this is like a whole thing with defense, right? With your cornerbacks. Do you want the guy that's going to house 7 interceptions, but will give up an over 100 passing rating, give up over 100 yards on a regular basis to receivers? Like, is the big play worth what he gives up? Like, that's the thing for me. But breaking the record for pick sixes definitely should give him better odds than what he's sitting at right now.
And I will counter that with what is more impactful to the game. You have a defensive run stopper, sure, you get a run stuff that could set a drive back, or they could just pass for a first down on the next play. You could get a sack and drop some back 6-7 yards, and it could stop a drive, or they could get a big pass or a penalty or something, get right back at it next play. A pick six, it takes some work to come back from that. That is huge. I mean, that is a momentum shifter. That is points on the board. That's not just a one-stop play. That is a whole touchdown. I mean, it takes a whole drive to get back to that. And we've seen, if you're playing against a team like the Cowboys, a defense like that is so hard to score against, it doesn't matter what he gives up. If he's going to get pick sixes on top of what an offense can do, and you have that good of a defense, he's able to give up yards. He's able to give up some big plays because it's so detrimental to the team.
The only thing I can argue against with that is, so he does that 7 times a year. That's big because, I mean, 9 to 10 wins get you in the playoffs. That probably gives you a huge boost in 7. What about the rest of the season? Like, if he's giving up 100 yards a game in those other games, that's a huge blow too. Like, is that just as counterintuitive to go against the 7 touchdowns? Like, I was never a fan of Trayvon Diggs for this exact same reason. It seems like then they drafted another corner and he became another Trayvon Diggs.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I guess you can make that argument for really anybody. You can say, like, who's our sacks leader right now? How many sacks does the leader have this year?
I'd have to look. I'll look at it right now. NFL sacks leader. Asking Google.
TJ Watt, 19.
Yep.
19 sacks, 17 games, 18 games. I mean, you're talking about 1 sack per game. So awesome. 1 big play stop. What do you do the rest of the game? And I know that's a really stupid answer because I know TJ Watt is a game wrecker and he's making run stuffs and he's getting pressures and he's forcing bad throws. And I get all that. But if you're going to make the argument of, well, he only had this many picks, so what did he do the rest of the games? Okay, well, he only had this many sacks, so what did he do the rest of the game?
It's true. That's a great counter argument.
Well, that's back to the whole sacks pressure rate and, how many tackles for loss on top of that do you have? How many, stops in the hole does he have for all that? But if you want to give it to a guy that, like, if it's truly defensive MVP, you can't count out Max Crosby, who plays 98% of the snaps and is just always in there fighting. Has one of the most competitive spirits you'll ever see in anybody. He's not going to win the award, but definitely deserves a recognition.
Dude, one of the most interesting
Crosby
personalities.
He is one of my favorite players in the NFL, and I feel like Max Crosby is that guy that you either love him or you hate him. And I guarantee you there is a huge fan base out there that hates Max Crosby with a passion, and I think that makes me like him more because there's so many players that I can't stand, and look how much joy it brings you just to mention that player's name or those players. I mean, it's awesome. I love Max Crosby. He's a game wrecker. He talks smack to the other team, gets in their head all game long. I mean, dude's a badass. I mean, I would love to have Max Crosby on my team.
I'm just thinking back to somewhere near the end of the season, there was a mic'd up with an opposing quarterback. I want to say it was Mahomes. I could be wrong. And all you do is every single time Max Crosby gets close to me, just hear a dude screaming his head off. And Mahomes is like, this guy is like just crazy. He's just literally screaming. But he's such a spark plug for the rest of the defense around him too. He has so much energy that he picks up the play of the people around him as well.
George, do the last two together because I think they correlate.
Okay. Offensive player of the year. The finalists were Tyreek Hill plus 275, Lamar Jackson plus 5,000, CeeDee Lamb plus 1,500, Christian McCaffrey, the leader there, at minus 375, and Dak Prescott at plus 2,000. And then the final award, obviously, MVP, most valuable player. Lamar Jackson was low on the offensive player of the year because he is the leader in MVP at minus 10,000. We also have Josh Allen at plus 3,000, Christian McCaffrey plus 425, Dak Prescott plus 1,800, and Brock Purdy plus 2,500. It warms my heart a little bit to see McCaffrey as the number 2 in odds, but it's not going to happen.
It should.
Yeah, I'm not
It should.
gonna discuss MVP. I think it's a pointless award until somebody other than a quarterback wins it. I won't discuss that one. But offensive player of the year, I like Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, dude's a game changer. He can do so much on offense, and it's not just what he does; it's also the attention that he brings. The whole defense has to be aware of so many different options that he can do. It has the defense on their heels at all times, and it opens up so much more for that offense. And you can see the difference it makes having him on the field compared to when he's not. Obviously, McCaffrey deserves it.
Yeah, I agree. I did ask George to read them together because for me, if I was handing out the awards, I would give offensive player to Tyreek Hill and MVP to Christian McCaffrey. I think he means the most to the team. And I get it. Some people were like, well, look at his team. It's so stacked. Like, he's not the only guy there. Like, where Lamar, it was, a bunch of running backs and a rookie wide receiver and some guys that haven't been good. And his tight end got hurt. And he still led him to the best, record in the AFC. So I hear it. But I think to your point, too, and I think J.J. Watt, the year, I know as much as you hate him, the year he was the defensive MVP, but they talk about him potentially being the MVP is 2014 when Aaron Rodgers won it. He was like, there should be a best player and a most valuable player. And he said the most valuable player is always going to be a quarterback because it's the most valuable position. But the most valuable player is not always the best player. And I'm kind of with him. I'm like, I think we need to reevaluate the word valuable and make it the best. Because Lamar Jackson was not the best player in football this year.
No.
Honestly, probably wouldn't even be my top 3 if we're doing strictly best player. And that's not a knock at Lamar. I'm the biggest Lamar supporter on this podcast.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true. But the only thing I would say, I would give Christian McCaffrey the MVP. And then if you go to offensive player of the year, the leader would be Tyreek Hill. But I want to actually put this on record, sure, if you want to. Make an argument for CeeDee Lamb. Because if you look at the play around him, Tyreek Hill was fantastic. The offense was definitely different without him out there. But they had so many rushing touchdowns. Their offense was still so multi-layered without him. The Cowboys had CeeDee Lamb, and that seemed like it was it. Like, their other wide receivers were inconsistent. Their run game wasn't great. Their number 1 running back they thought was going to blow up was Tony Pollard, and he did very mediocre. I would argue CeeDee Lamb meant more to that team than Tyreek Hill meant to Miami.
And you can put this one on record. I think one of the finalists for Offensive Player of the Year should have been Jason Kelce. You want to talk about somebody who completely changed an offense? I mean, as much as I tried making my jokes last time saying he's just a center, who cares? I mean, he really is the centerpiece of that offense. I mean, the tush push might get banned from the NFL because of how dominant it was and how annoying it became in the NFL. And it wasn't because of Jalen Hurts. It was because of Jason Kelce. And then you think about all the other things that he was able to do. If the Eagles didn't fall apart, I'd say Jason Kelce should be in those nominations as well. And I think that's the other thing is we need to look at, if we are looking at best player, there's so much more. It's a team game. There's 11 guys on offense. There's 11 guys on defense. There's so much more that goes into it. And value needs to be reevaluated. It's not just the guys that are putting up the points. How many times do you see running backs and quarterbacks and everything else come into these interviews and go, if it wasn't for my offensive line, I wouldn't have done it. Or you got to give the thanks to them. It's not to me. That's why they take him out to dinners and buy him watches and buy him phones. I mean, these are people that are underrated. They're not being evaluated enough.
All right, let's get an offensive line award here. I mean, that wraps up the fantasy awards portion. Before we do the next segment, just a little bit more breaking news because normally that happens right after. Cliff Kingsbury, former Arizona head coach, will be the offensive coordinator with the Las Vegas Raiders. So Cliff Kingsbury is headed to Las Vegas, but not for the Super Bowl.
All right, next we have on the docket, we thought it'd be fun since we were talking about all these betting odds and whatever else to look ahead to 2025 Super Bowl. and see some of the early odds on here and what we think might be some interesting bets. So I'll start off with talking about the top 5 in odds, and then we can kind of throw out some other teams that we thought were interesting. So leader in the clubhouse so far, San Francisco 49ers plus 550. Then the Kansas City Chiefs plus 750. So that's the 2 teams in the Super Bowl now. They expect to have a good chance to go back. Baltimore Ravens plus 900 in third. The Bills plus 950 in fourth. And then tied for fifth is the Lions and the Bengals at plus 1,200. Anything interesting in that top 5/6?
I mean, I think it's pretty consistent. I think the odds get a little bit as you go down and look at it, a little crazy. I know, without spoiling too much of where we're going next, but like the Bears are super high, the Falcons are high for some reason, but then you have like the Rams, they're a little low. Cowboys, the Eagles are low, like in terms of the odds. But I do, and maybe I'll put $1 on it. Maybe we'll all put $1 on our pick right now. I think Chad Ochocinco on his whatever he does was Shannon Sharp mentioned this.
On his whatever he does.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's his. It might be Shannon Sharp's, but that's not the point. He said it, and now like it just stuck with me. And there's no orange in the Super Bowl logo, but there is white. And the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow coming back. I know they lost their offensive coordinator, but the Super Bowl's in Louisiana. Talk about a homecoming. I love storylines. Already talking to for 2025.
The NFL loves storylines.
Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase returning to Louisiana where they went to college and won a national championship to win a potential Super Bowl makes me feel like betting $1.
So I thought with the Chiefs beating the Ravens that we were finally off the whole Super Bowl logo colors thing. I guess we're not. I guess we're still
we're
on
not.
that.
They're both red, so they're both still in it. I don't know.
And it was 4 out of 5 years. There was still a year in the middle they tried to throw you off.
I did think it was funny that the NFL put white in the logo for the mask for the New Orleans theme. And it's just like, well, I guess technically any team can be that. So if they even cared about an online conspiracy theory.
We care about online conspiracy theories. Tyler, who is your favorite not on the list that you want to mention here?
Well, I don't know. I find the list very interesting. I like the Cowboys a lot at plus 2,000, but I've been a Cowboys truther for 3 years now. I'm not actually a Cowboys fan. I just think they have a very, very good team. Great offense, great defense. I mean, if they stop choking, it's bound to happen eventually. I want to like the Dolphins. I've been rooting for the Dolphins for years now, but I mean, I just don't think they have what it takes to get over that hump. I think they are an amazing regular season team. I don't think they're a dominant playoff team until I see something change with them. It's difficult. I wish the Lions. I don't know, man. I kind of want to put money on the Texans.
What are their odds right now?
Plus 2,000.
See, them like the Cowboys just seems like a good return on investment for a team that has a solid chance. Like, why would you put money on the Bills at plus 950 when you feel like they probably could have the same chance that the Cowboys or the Texans would have?
And also, plus 2,200 for the Eagles is so tempting. I hate the Eagles. I hope they lose every game next year. But we're talking about a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And last year, George told me, oh, the whole team fell apart. They lost everybody. I mean, they really didn't. They lost some people, but they were still a super dominant team until something happened in the middle of the year. Whatever that locker room drama or whatever it was that caused their downfall, you clear that out, they're right back to a dominant team. They could easily be in the Super Bowl again next year, with a couple ads and, clearing of house or whoever is causing it. Plus 2,200. That's way too tempting for a really good team.
Better coordinator hires than they had last year, I think is
Do you have the odds up?
That gives me hope.
Yeah.
Isn't Chicago higher than them?
No.
Or
the Bears are plus 3,000.
They're plus 3,000. Okay. But they're higher than the Browns and the Rams.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to mention the Rams at plus 3,500. How many strides they made this year? They made the playoffs. Sean McVay's been to a Super Bowl or won a Super Bowl before. Same with Stafford. They finally they had that little quick retool. They're a young team, and all of a sudden you're going to give them such a step back.
Okay, here's an interesting one for you. So we have, oh gosh, Chip Kelly. Yeah, breaking news on Chip Kelly. We don't want any of that. So Bears plus 3,000. Cody's definitely wigging out about this one because, I mean, it doesn't make sense. They've been so bad for so long. How are they suddenly just going to be this amazing team? They are above the Rams. They're above the Browns, who were just in the playoffs. They're above the Colts, who will be getting Anthony Richardson back. They're above the Vikings, who have been a really good team for the last how many years. But the one that really shocks me, I mean, we're talking about comeback player of the year. Baker Mayfield and the Bucks are at plus 6,000.
Yeah, that's
Double
actually
the odds of the Chicago Bears. Like, I'm not saying that I think the Bucks are going to win the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong. I don't want that to be what the message is going across. But compared to the Bears, you're
Make it the
telling me
title. Tyler says Buccaneers win Super Bowl 2025.
oh, I don't care what you put as the title. But still, it blows my mind.
Yeah, that's if you flip those two, I would have felt like it was way more accurate. Bucks plus 3,000. They were the team that kind of made some strides this year. The Baker Mayfield revenge tour. Bears down at plus 6,000 because they were overhyped this year, and now it just feels like they're overhyping them again. And people didn't learn that. Don't get your hopes up on a team like the Bears with Justin Fields, who is such a polarizing quarterback. Is he
Caleb
good?
Williams.
Is he not good? We don't know until you actually see it.
Cardinals are tied with the Saints. Cardinals are above the Broncos. Cardinals are above the Raiders. What?
That Kyler Murray to Marvin
Kyler
Harrison
Murray, yeah, it's got to be the Kyler Murray coming a year off of an ACL now hype. If you want to call it hype, still being that low.
because they beat the Eagles in Week 17.
That's not an accomplishment.
I'm just saying they
I'm
did.
just saying too.
They look good, but we don't. I think that's pretty much it. Tyler, I sent you a text, but you didn't respond.
I
And
did.
George emphasized it. Do you have an oddball fact? I forgot to ask pre-show.
It's in the chat on here. I said yes.
Oh, well, I didn't see that.
Oh.
All right. So,
Okay.
Tyler's oddball fact coming up.
I left the glasses, Cody. It's going to be a fun one today because my oddball fact is going to be thrown to one of you guys to explain my oddball fact. My oddball fact of the day is, did you know that you can become an owner of an NFL team? Partial owner. Did you know that's possible? Cody, explain.
Yes. So, it doesn't happen very often, but every couple of years, you've probably heard this by now, but the Green Bay Packers are the only team without an owner. They are owned by their fans. It's something that started a long time ago to keep the team in Green Bay, NFL's smallest market. But yeah, last time I believe it was $250 or $350, something like between there for a 1/10 share of the Green Bay Packers. Nice little certificate, get to put up on your wall. Soon it'll be on the wall behind me, but soon's relative. But yeah, it's a pretty cool experience, and it's also cool. So I could go on a whole diatribe about this, but it's cool because when they do these stock sales, it's for renovation. So the last one was for new video boards. It was for upgrades to the stands, upgrades X, Y, and Z. Like when they do the stock sales, it has to go to bettering the team and their facilities. It can't go towards player personnel. It can't go toward coach's salary. It has to go to the betterment of the team. And people talk about all the time, like, oh, it's so dumb. You're just paying for a piece of paper. But then we have these billionaire owners that are like, oh, we're going to build this stadium, but the taxpayers are going to have to pay for it just because you live in that city. Maybe you don't even support that team, but now you have to pay for the new Bill Stadium or the new Titan Stadium. Like, so it's cool that, like, yeah, it's expensive. We can go to shareholders meeting in July. but like there's not much other perks to it. We can't resell it, but it's like, yeah, I'm supporting my team and I'm an owner of it. That's pretty cool. It's in my Twitter bio or X
So
bio, whatever we talk about it.
this just goes to show that Packers fans are some of the most passionate fans about any team, which also is shown by the wait list on season tickets, which is the longest in the NFL. Cody, you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I've been on the wait list for season tickets for multiple years now, and I'm still in the 100,000s. So
How many seats are in that stadium? 60, 70, 80,000?
I believe it's the fourth largest stadium in the league, and don't ask me why I know that. With like 72,000. I gotta look it up.
So he's like, there's like a stadium and a half's worth of fans just on the wait list.
Yeah. Now, I believe, I don't know if it's still allowed, but it used to be. I'm pretty sure it's still allowed. Tickets can be passed down through families, which is why that's part of the thing. Like once someone passed away, they can will their tickets to another family member.
Could you imagine that?
Because a lot of people are like, oh, I sit in my grandfather's seats, but like that's how important the community is for Green Bay. Like, I know you guys haven't been there. You have to make it there. I'm going to take you there one day. Literally, like imagine driving through Kutztown, and instead of the university, it's a football stadium, and then you just drive around on the road, and it's like a little mom and pop gas station. Like, it is such a cool environment to be at in Green Bay, and the fans are a big reason for it. One more fun fact, since we're talking about the Green Bay and how cool they are, and I'll talk about that forever. But it made a lot of news about the Buffalo Bills hiring shovelers for the snow. Green Bay's doing that for years. They had to start paying people in cash because the fans were so proud to have a check from the Green Bay Packers that they would frame it and put it on their wall instead of actually cashing it.
And then they could technically get in trouble because free labor.
I guess, yeah. So they have to start paying in cash.
Look, I've never been a quote unquote fan of the Packers, but I have always respected them and the fans. Like everyone talks Bills Mafia, Bills Mafia. They're such passionate fans, dude. No one compares to the Packers fans. And that's like, I am a hot takes guy, but look, Packers fans are number one. They really are the most passionate fan base in the NFL. And for such a small market, it's really impressive. I respect small market teams as a fan of a fellow one. But we don't even see that in Nashville. You're never going to see that in Nashville. So it's super cool. Yeah, just that was my oddball fact of the day. Throwing it over to Cody.
I appreciate it, man. And I could talk Packers football all day long. Hence, I mean, heck, I'm wearing a G right now. I could love the Packers. I talk about them all the time. But we're going to keep talking football. We have the Super Bowl coming up. We talked about 2025 winners. We got to break down 2024 winners between the Chiefs and the 49ers, and we'll do that next week. I'm Cody Roadcap.
200?
Episode 200, you're right. That's a big milestone. That's kind of crazy. 200 episodes already?
Yeah.
But I guess you got to wait for that one. I'm Cody Roadcap.
I feel like I've only been here for 30 of them.
That's probably true, too. George Kerth and Tyler Snyder, and we will talk to you all next week.